Welcome, Integrating Lifestyle Medicine. I am Michael Frank. Cardiovascular and peripheral artery disease. So I would like to introduce the term lifestyle disease. Look at all these things that contribute: cigarette, diet, saturated fat, cholesterol, processed meat, sedentary lifestyle, blood pressure, cholesterol, type 1 and 2 diabetes, on and on and on. How many of those are lifestyle related? Cigarette smoking all the way down to obesity is lifestyle related. Increasing age, especially among those 65 years and older, now that we are looking at the biological versus chronological age, even that can be considered a lifestyle issue, right? And even the last one, which is just the amino acid that naturally occurs, but it's a problem when it's elevated, can be influenced by diet. So these issues are so prevalent that now we actually have a syndrome for that called metabolic syndrome: obesity, blood sugar. And I have some military, I don't know how many people in the audience are serving veterans or are veterans, so I just sprinkled some military information in there. Hypertension, as we know, is a silent killer. And if you looked at this, 8.7% of AGR soldiers and techs in the Guard are hypertensive. And that's terrible. That's scary. Because so many of these things are happening with the heart and the metabolic problem, we connect those two conditions, and we have cardiometabolic conditions: heart attack, stroke. At the bottom, fatty liver disease, that used to be almost non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, was almost unheard of. Now we see it in children. And consequently, we have cardiometabolic syndrome. High blood pressure, again, look at these things. This is all lifestyle related. I would like you to pay attention to almost the last one, and that's inflammation. Inflammation may be the #1 killer. And look what inflammation affects. We sometimes think of inflammation, you cut yourself and it gets inflamed. But really, it's cardiovascular diseases, gastrointestinal disorders, mental illness, depression can be tied to inflammation, metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes. You probably heard that anecdote about people with gum disease subsequently having heart attack or having heart issues. So inflammation connects everything. It can be reduced by eating anti-inflammatory foods, exercising, losing weight, managing stress, and controlling blood sugar. At the bottom, you can see that recent studies suggest that childhood trauma, this is real interesting, and specifically emotional neglect, are associated with IL-6 at midlife. IL-6 is a protein that helps regulate immune response, and high IL-6 is associated with poor prognosis for cancer, COVID, and all kinds of arthritis, etc. And then we have outside factors on our health: air pollution, water contamination, all these bad news, climate change. Girls now experience early puberty, which is not healthy, driven by extra estrogen. Plastic breaks down to xenoestrogen, and which is exogenous estrogen. We also have 100% of placenta and 100% of sperm now have microplastics, which means that the problem begins in utero, and we have microplastics in our DNA. It's also a very high cost problem, lifestyle diseases. Chronic diseases account for 61% of all deaths globally. In the US, 90% of healthcare spending is on chronic diseases, and that means lifestyle diseases. And as you see at the bottom, this is primarily driven by our diet. How much do we spend on this? Well, look at this. Heart disease, 350 billion, stroke, 45 billion, cancer, 125, and on and on. What does this mean? Probably nothing to you, right? If you are like me, you just know that this is more than your mortgage. So to put it in perspective, the United States annual military budget for 2025 is 850 billion, to be capped at 895 billion. As of 2025, the total annual education budget, and that's K-12 to higher education, all of that, is 857 billion. The total annual cost of lifestyle diseases caused by what we eat is estimated to be over $1 trillion. And a little bit of mental health statistics, because this is mental health presentation. We also have, as you can see, mental health crisis. 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness each year. If we were doing this presentation or conference in person, I would tell you, look around you, somebody's going through something on Zoom. Just imagine, 1 out of 5, a lot of people that have some kind of issue. So lifestyle medicine is kind of, I don't know if that's a good term, but case management model. The medical field is dividing into, on one hand, real specialization. That's important. Even the orthopedic surgeon there's a hip guy, there's a shoulder guy, and when it comes to stuff like brain and heart, they probably specialize even more. But on the other hand, that presents a problem where everybody's looking at the one piece of the elephant, right? So on the other hand, we have doctors now starting to do this lifestyle medicine, looking at lifestyle, looking at what affects our health and overall health. If you go to Kaiser, some major managed care places, VA, there's more and more talk about lifestyle medicine. Same with mental health. Mental health used to be, the mental hygiene back in 1800s, right? That developed into mental health. Then that sounded too stigmatizing. We had the Affordable Care Act, where we started looking at people who have addiction and behavioral health. We started looking at people with AIDS when we had the AIDS crisis, who were incarcerated, who also had a mental health disorder and addiction. So we started combining all these things and looking at it more holistically. There's a caveat at the end of my presentation about mental health, though, and this case management model. And here we come to lifestyle medicine. The core principles are to use daily healthy habits to prevent, treat, and even reverse chronic diseases. It's a new thing. It's sexy. It's modern. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine was established in 2004. It's now slowly getting into hospitals and clinics. However, Hippocrates, who died 380 BCE, or 376 to 380 BCE, already talked about lifestyle medicine, basically. Ayurveda, that's been around for centuries, is some of it is starting to be evidence-based. So we've been on to this for a long time. This is important. Your health is the result of your lifestyle. Things that run in the family, quote unquote, are often cultural, not genetic. Your parents didn't give you a heart disease. Your parents taught you how to get it. And this can sound really terrible, right? We don't want to hear Aunt Betty died of cancer because she was eating crappy food. That just sounds blaming and so cold. But we have to get past that, because we don't mind saying that Uncle Harry died because he smoked too many cigarettes. So we just need to, again, it's not about blaming, right? It's about recognizing the lifestyle that we may not be aware of is very bad for us. So lifestyle medicine has 6 pillars. Nutrition, I would like you to notice there, whole food, plant, and it can be whole food, plant-based diet, or a little milder version, whole food, if you don't want to be vegan, plant predominant diet. So whether you're vegan or not, it should be plant predominant, and whole food is really important versus processed food, right? And it's shown, evidence supports that it's shown to treat and reverse chronic illness. And it's all connected. If you look at it like stress affects sleep, sleep affects stress, physical activity affects sleep and stress, and on and on and on. Army, again, with a little bit of military information there. 2018 pilot of this H2F, Holistic Health and Fitness, was rolled out, and now 5 brigades, I believe, as of 2020, are kind of using this model: physical readiness, nutritional readiness. As you can see, that's lifestyle medicine, but military being military, we don't want to use the term medicine, so it becomes holistic health. In my own practice, but just I think it's easier to explain, so I use it in presentations, break this down into 10 different pillars. And before I go further, look at this and think about how many have to do with mind and mental health. Food and nutrition, definitely. Physical activity, spiritual life, social life, the brain. They all affect mental health, or mental health affect them. So the first one I have is examine lifestyle, which I shamelessly, obviously stole from Plato, right? Or Socrates, life unexamined is not worth living. And I'm a firm believer before you start treating anybody, it's really important to sit down and question why are they doing, what are their goals, and why are they doing what they're doing? Are they trying to quit smoking, eat healthy because they want to be healthy because society pressures them into certain lifestyle? Or is that really what they want? So education, and only subsequent to discussion and buying, buying into it, what is their intention? And because there are already programs, apps, webinars for all this stuff, and nobody cares. So I discuss with my patients, who are you and what do you want? And that it's really important. And I spend a lot of time doing that in the beginning. Life satisfaction is a predictor of better cardiovascular health. So look at your values, willingness to change. That's the sort of the alcohol thing, right? Versus ability to change versus, maybe just making them feel better about being stuck. We don't want to do that. But a lot of patients want that from us. So what is their purpose of life? Personal growth, self-acceptance. Food and nutrition, that's my favorite pillar of these because I like to eat. And also food and nutrition may be the number one killer, as you saw, the lifestyle diseases. So I talk to my patients both about nutrition, and I talked to them about their relationship with food and culture. I have a background. Me and Tom before this talked about my background in semiotics of food. It was actually my dissertation was on semiotics of food in seduction, how we use food and fashion in getting laid. So relationship with food, culture, family. Do you see food as fuel? Like some people, some dietitians even use that terminology that you have Ferrari, you're not gonna put cheap gas in it or diesel. And, that's one way to look at it. Some people appreciate it. But, to me, you are kind of like a machine or cog in this kind of machine towards some goal. Or do you look at food, like I prefer, as a nutrition, as almost like a spiritual thing versus fuel efficiency? So another military slide. How is this possible? Look at the first one. It just talks about that there's a big food insecurity in the United States and in military, which means people don't have access to enough food. And yet, obesity is rampant in both, in this case, Army National Guard, but also in a civilian world. So how is that possible? There's, people don't have access to enough food, and yet they get obese. So maybe it has to do with the quality of the food. And we introduce the standard American diet, otherwise known as SAD. You look at it, the first thing is it features significant amount of highly processed foods that are often high in sodium, unhealthy fat, and added sugar. This pretty much defines the rest of the slide. Nutritional implication of the standard American diet: cardiovascular disease, obesity. And again, I'm flying through these slides, but I would like you actually to just kind of notice how these terms repeat themselves. So sad to say, ham, hot dogs, bacon, sausage, cold cuts. World Health Organization classified those as group 1 carcinogen, same as tobacco and asbestos in 2015. And beef, pork, lamb as category 2A, probably carcinogenic to humans. This is not new. Hippocrates, remember the guy, I mentioned him earlier? All disease start with the gut. He had that understanding. There are over 18,000 research papers on gut brain alone in PubMed. That was as of 2024. I just didn't go back, didn't update the slide. I'm sure it's double that by now. There are 10 to 15 times more neural connections from gut to the brain than brain to the gut. That's pretty important because somehow stomach, when we talk about gut feelings, etc., the stomach really communicates our brain and production of serotonin and dopamine. And at the bottom, 10 trillion cells in human body, 100 trillion bacteria in the gut, plus the viruses and parasites. Microbiome. It's reasonable to speculate dietary alterations resulting, you can read that. So stress and depression raise consumption of sugar and fat. We are actually driven when we are stressed to seek more sugar and fat. altering subsequently the microbiome. And studies show that eating plant-based diet, leafy greens, and berries improve the microbiome and the microbiome-brain communication to improve psychiatric symptoms. There is actually evidence that your change in microbiome improves your psychiatric well-being. But average American, standard American diet is 60 to 70% ultra-processed foods. Americans eat 150 pounds of sugar annually. So 4.2 grams of sugar is in level teaspoon. 7.5 grams of sugar is in heaped teaspoon. So what that means is 32 grams of sugar or 10 teaspoons in a 12 ounce of Coke. Or if you know people, I know people who drink 2 liters a day or more. So in a 2-liter bottle, there's 218 grams or 54 teaspoons of sugar. So 70% of food in grocery store is ultra processed food. So it's everywhere. It's not like we have to seek it. It seeks us. They put it in our face. It's hard to avoid. There's also fiber I didn't mention on the slide, but daily fiber recommendation is 14 grams for every 1,000 calories on a 28 to 32 or 28 to 32 grams daily based on 2,000 to 2,400 calorie diet. And average American eats only 15 to 16 grams. So we don't need enough fiber. We eat too much junk. There's also food and culture, how much time we spend eating. That's really important. Mindfulness and eating. So look how long, because eating is related to, and the social life is related to stress, and spiritual side of us, which can be part of eating, is related to stress, and stress related to our health, etc. So friends, 2 hours, 11 minutes. So this is how long people take around the world a day to sit down and eat. We eat less than half what Spain eats at a time. And nutrition. Rewrite the narrative how you think and talk about food. I spend a lot of times doing that. I work with bariatric patients. I should have mentioned that quite a bit. So I spend a lot of time talking about establishing new rituals, really reinventing who you are when it comes to food. Look at food and culture, food and family, etc. Learn to cook. I spend a lot of time teaching. I even do videos teaching people how to cook simple, nutritious meals. You don't need to be a dietitian. Actually, you shouldn't give dietary advice, but there is no controversy about a whole food plant-based diet, telling people quit eating junk, learn to cook, meal prep. Maybe you can teach your patients how to do budget shopping for healthy ingredients, teach them nutritional labels, teach caloric and nutritional density, teach about misinformation on YouTube and media. I always talk to people about Southern California, right? So people love either Mexican food or Asian food. I always tell my patients, Mexican food can be either the most unhealthy food out there or the healthiest food out there, depending on whether you fry everything in lard or there's just so many vegetables that can be used in Mexican cuisine. So don't tell people to eat keto or eat meat only. None of that. Just eat healthy. Make the cuisine you already love, change it into healthy cuisine, and easy enough. Physical activity. That is not my area of expertise. I walk 3 miles every day, and I tell patients just start simple. You don't have to get hung up on gimmicks. Again, same as with the diet. Simple walk. Hippocrates again said walking is the man's best medicine. Yoga, Tai Chi. Worldwide, 25% of adults are not physically active enough. And in the United States, 36% of adults don't engage in any leisure time physical activity. Yeah, like sharks, guys, we have to keep moving or we'll drown. Fitness and military, just another little military slide in here. Just a piece of trivia that's not on this slide as you're reading it. World War II, the United States had problem getting healthy soldiers because they were too skinny. And that led to vitamin research and processed food research. and that got us where we are today. But 40% of recruits in Second World War were undernourished. Average recruit was 5'8" and 144 pounds. We have changed. We have grown. Spiritual life. This is a really important component to me. What is a spiritual life? Life, it doesn't mean religion, or that can, but doesn't have to. Personal journey of seeking meaning, purpose, and connection beyond the material world. It involves exploring questions about existence, values, and one's place in the universe. And we can be, as clinicians, really valuable, not teaching that, not suggesting that, not do spiritual interventions, but supporting our patients and discovering what are their values. Values are so important, right? What are their values, and learn them, help them discover them or achieve them. A lack of spiritual life. I just want to highlight emotional and psychological effects, behavioral effects, physical effects, and weakened, at the bottom, weakened immune system. Remember the thing about immunity? So everything is just kind of together, right? Spiritual well-being. These are just some kind of definitions, relationship, values, the things we already mentioned, connection with nature. And at the bottom, in a sense, spiritual well-being involves nurturing the inner aspects of oneself and finding meaning, connection, and peace. It's deeply personal and can vary greatly between individuals, influenced by personal beliefs, values, and experiences. So I hope with that definition, it doesn't offend anybody. Everybody can find something. This is actually from my own evaluation that I make patients fill out before I start talking to them. I have all these categories there, and I just keep it simple like this. This is enough to open a conversation. Do you belong to church, temple? Do you find solace in your faith? Do you have meditation practice? How many people do you have that you call close friends? And I will later talk about social connection, but it's important from a spiritual perspective also. How many people do you have you can depend on and confide in? And however you may define it, what do you do to nourish your soul? I have too many slides. If I had 2 hours for this presentation, I would stop right now. And especially if we did this in person, it's kind of hard to do this on Zoom. I would actually stop and tell you to just spend a few seconds, minutes with this slide and reflect on yourself and see how well, as a provider or clinician, how well you're doing in this category. A lot of people don't do well in that. Social life. Social life is really important. In fact, loneliness is maybe a #1 killer. There's a lot of research, more and more research showing how dangerous loneliness really is, especially for the elderly. It affects mental health, physical health, anxiety, depression, and at the bottom, cognitive function, and cognitive decline. I don't know about you. I have memory of a goldfish. So as I get older, I'm panicking when I read these studies, and I'll try to eat whatever to slow down the decline. Continued loneliness, behavior and lifestyle effects, quality of life. So all these bad, and mental health. Sex is good. Sex makes life worth living, and actually makes us, as evidence-based, makes us healthier. So sex is good, but we're not doing that well in that category. Boys actually prefer masturbation to sex, because these days, how we are separated through communicating through social media, until age 35, boys will say that just meeting people and talking to girl is just way too complicated and scary and anxiety producing. So they will actually prefer porn. And all kinds of bad news, lower sperm count, microplastics, I mentioned that, erectile dysfunctions, which are also caused by high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, etc. And it's connected to depression, anxiety, stress, etc. Again, my whole point, and I hope you're noticing that as we go, that I'm repeating myself, because it's all connected. Social life. Just a little shout out to Focus. I guess it's VFWC that Tom works for, but I met Tom many, many years ago, and when he was mainly working with focus program, and I love focus. I never ever had a complaint, and it's not a social life because marriage, family is so important. I refer people obviously in the military, and focus has saved marriages or at least helped with amicable divorce where it wasn't too damaging for the kids. So shout out here to Tom and the focus program. They recognize the importance of family, resiliency, social life. Stress management. Stress may be the number one killer. And here are some strategies how we can deal with stress: regular exercise, balanced nutrition, adequate sleep, mindfulness and meditation, cognitive behavioral techniques. So, yeah, do you see how it's repeating itself, how it's connected? I'm talking about stress and exercise, which I mentioned exercise, right? How important exercise is. But stress is reduced by exercise, by balanced nutrition, that microbiome. Balanced nutrition is more, again, more and more every day. There are new studies showing how incredibly important healthy nutrition is our overall well-being. Adequate sleep. Yeah, sleep is in a whole other category. Mindfulness and meditation, that's the maybe the spiritual aspect, and cognitive behavioral techniques. Social and relational strategies. So we are back to the social life I mentioned. It's all connected. Our support networks, how many people we have in our lives. And then spiritual and personal growth, spiritual practices, connection with nature, and personal development. The brain. Lifestyle medicine doesn't have that as a separate category. Maybe because of that whole goldfish thing and getting older, I do. And I look at two things. Two things are important. It's cognitive development, right? Learning new things and becoming smarter, being engaged. And other one is cognitive maintenance, all that study of all elderly people who are learning new languages, doing crossword puzzles that keeps them from cognitive decline. If we work with veterans or service members, this area is actually, so some of this, it's not about old people, right? With the military population, we have TBI, we have mental disorders. Some of them are linked to cognitive decline. So this is a very important area. Cognitive life. This is also from my intake, my evaluation. Reading books, new languages, or just new things, doing crossword puzzles, all help maintain our cognitive health. So I ask my patients, and you guys can stop for a second and think about it. What do you engage in? Do you read books? Do you learn new languages? And sometimes people actually answer, yeah, I have to read a lot of reports for my job. Yeah, maybe. But do you read books for fun? Do you do crossword puzzles just for fun? So it's actually stimulating rather than drudgery. And on the other hand, it appears that social media and passive entertainment may be detrimental to our cognitive health. So how long do you spend on the following each day? And I assume that my patients underestimate or lie about how much they report, and they still will sometimes say 6 hours, 4 hours on social media. So if you are spending hours and then you say you don't, because people tell me they don't have time to go grocery shopping or they don't have time to meal prep. And I am not here to tell them that they do. I'm not going to argue. But if you spend 6 hours playing video games or watching TV, then maybe it's about priorities, right? And finding time to meal prep on Sunday or eating healthier. Sleep may be number one killer. So I don't know if you caught that. I said about 5 different things that they may be number one killer. And there's that research. I've read books that were showing that stress is number one killer. I've read many very good articles that argue that loneliness is the number one killer. Uh, I've definitely read many that shows how eating ultra processed food is the number one killer. And there's more and more research that shows that sleep is just really important, and lack of sleep may be the number one killer. So I just kind of did as a joke, as an anecdote, that I mentioned it several times. So in conclusion, what conclusion can we draw from that? Well, one could be that we don't know what we're talking about, but the positive conclusion to this would be that a lifestyle is a number one killer. That why argue whether sleep or stress is more damaging, a lack of sleep or stress is more damaging, when really all of these things are incredibly detrimental. And another slide about military. 47 reported getting 7 or more hours of sleep per night on weeknights. 73 achieved this target on weekends. Yeah, I don't know. How ask yourselves, in our society, most people that I know don't get. I try. I take this lifestyle medicine really too hard, and I get up super early in the morning, so I really try to get the hours of sleep, and I make it my. I'm not a biohacker, but I try to do all these things, and I make it a priority, and still I fail. Life happens. Part of it is there is a stigma about sleep. That whole Max Weber Protestant ethic, right? We should be working. We should be a cog of that machine I mentioned earlier, and when I was talking about nutrition and as a fuel. And so it's not that we work 24/7, all of us, but somehow sleep seems opposite of what you should be doing. So naps are frowned upon, and people just kind of don't prioritize sleep because they feel some guilt. Yeah, I know I should get enough sleep, but I have this other important thing I should be productive doing. One thing about this, of course, I educate my patients and I talk to them, but just ethics, right? Rule out sleep disorder, especially with our population. They should go, if they have sleep issues, they should go get evaluated for sleep apnea or um, whatever other issues. And with our population, the first question should be, how many monsters a day do you drink? And when is the last one? And if I drink the last one 9 o'clock at night, maybe we should talk about that. Addictions. So yeah, that's another pillar. That's avoiding addictive behaviors in lifestyle medicine. I just have it as a addiction. I have it a little broader. Addiction can be to substances, media, shopping, gambling, food, sex, pornography. We can be addicted to many things. So when I use it in my practice and in discussion, I use it for use, abuse, misuse, addiction, but also attachments. And I don't mean it healthy attachments that family systems are learning. I'm talking about sort of Buddhist perspective, right? Being attached to outcomes, how we want the world to be, being attached to notions, how other people should behave, being attached to just those kind of attachments. So I have a discussion about it too, and I put it actually under addictions because we can be addicted to our attachments. Another military statistic, 2.1% of Army National Guard soldiers tested positive in 2021. This is the latest state of the health of Army National Guard report for 2022. So I don't have newer statistics because they are not available. Addiction in the United States, it's a bad thing. Alcohol use, CDC estimates that 1 in 6 adults in the United States binge drinks, with about 54 something percent of those engaging in binge drinking having done so in the past month. Statistics are pretty sad. I don't know how, I actually don't see how many participants are on, but there's a pretty good chance that some of us have already had a drink today, which is not good. I'm laughing, but really it's not funny. And look at the first statistic. Nearly 1 in 5 children in the US live in a household where a parent or other adult has a substance use disorder. That's a terrible statistic. Media addiction. Um, that's a serious thing. It's not just hanging out and playing games. It's also the fake news these days, right? And the speed of information. We have so much information coming at us, very often conflicting. Uh, we are being seduced by commercials. We are being bombarded by contradicting news outlets. It's just so much information. It can be overwhelming. It's definitely stressful. Just so media addiction, mental health issues, cognitive effects, physical health, and again, it goes in the school, right? All right. I'm actually getting close to the end. Maybe we'll have time for a discussion. That would be perfect. Um, just the speed of media. I have an anecdote that I sometimes mention, and this is 15 years ago. I was at a conference in China, and there were some people doing research in Hong Kong, and they just brought to my attention how even how we communicate, young people, how they communicate, right? Years ago, you liked a girl, you wrote her a letter, then you just kind of put it in the mail and you waited for an answer. So you didn't even stress it for a couple of days. Today, a lot of the teenagers sleep with the phone under the pillow, and the texts are kind of, "Hey, how you doing?" And a couple of seconds later, "What's going on? Don't you love me anymore?" So just the immediacy of communication um, is just overwhelming. Now, I said earlier that I will have caveat about mental illness, and it's really important to say it is a thing. I don't want to make this sound that we abandoned some kind of evidence-based, proven mental illness treatment for social work or life coaching. Um, if somebody is profoundly depressed, they can't get out of the bed. They are crying for days. Somebody schizophrenic, I'm not going to tell them to go for a walk and eat a salad. I mean, I may have the discussion. I have a patient later on today, a new patient with ADHD. I will not disregard any classic treatment for ADHD and definitely not discard medication. However, I will talk to that patient about the evidence that's coming out about how diet can affect ADHD, about how exercise, whether it's rigorous exercise like aerobic or yoga that's sort of meditative, how valuable that can be in treatment of ADHD, or on the contrary, how it can make a lack of that, how it can make ADHD worse. So mental illness, it is a thing. We don't want to try to minimize it. Another military statistic. So in 2021, 3.9% of Army National Guard soldiers were classified as having symptoms of depression. Female soldiers. And if you are, I'm not sure about the demographic, but if you are a VA provider, if you are somebody who works with veterans, female veterans are often overlooked because while not always, but male soldiers or service members think of themselves as veterans, females traditionally don't think of themselves as veterans when they just don't think about going to the VA. They separate from the service and go on their way. So look at the female soldiers diagnosed with adjustment disorder, anxiety disorder, is double that of male soldiers. So if you work with service members, if you're in the military or veteran, it's really, if you work somewhere outside of mental health and you work with female soldiers or veterans, this is maybe something to keep in mind. Barriers and stigmas to implementation of a lifestyle medicine. The first one is a patient, right? If you go to a doctor and you say, I'm having XYZ problem, if the doctor says, like I mentioned earlier, yeah, go for a walk and eat some broccoli, you're not going to take the doctor seriously, right? As much as we bad talk medication, as much as we bad talk um, modern medicine, when we go to doctor and when we bring our child to a doctor, somehow we expect that I have a special problem. I need some heroic means of some intervention. I need 6 pills. I need to attack this, right? So part of it is really patient is the problem, and also patient's beliefs when it comes to nutrition, which is tied a lot of times to industry, both through advertising industry that educates the patient, and also the pharmaceutical and the medical industry. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about the industry, but pharmaceutical industry is really geared to find pharmaceutical solution to our problems. It's not, it's just not in a business to be studying leafy green vegetables. And a lot of the stigma actually is the doctor, because we want to be perceived, or medical doctors even more so, want to be perceived as knowledgeable specialists. We want to think of ourselves as, I read all these books behind me. I know something you don't. I have this specialized knowledge. So then it's hard to say like, well, the best I can offer you, or uh, how about you go eat a salad? So we sort of stigmatize ourselves. So we have to overcome all these things. And maybe, by the way, I was talking about earlier, just adding them to, not, don't disregard mental health treatment, but add this to questioning your patients, educating your patients. And ethics. On one hand, lifestyle medicine for behavioral health people is really just, eh, what's the danger? What kind of ethics problem is there, right? Go eat a salad, go for a walk. Know when to educate yourself. First of all, like if you want to talk about nutrition, unless like I have training as a nutritionist, but still I'm not a dietitian. I just have a little bit of training, and I spend years and years and years educating myself about nutrition. It's a passion of mine. I spend a lot of time, so I feel kind of qualified to talk about it, but I still limit it to, don't eat ultra processed foods and eat healthy, and don't panic about carbs and protein and this. So I try to sort of normalize it. But when people have special needs, make sure you refer out. That's important. That's the second sentence. Know when to refer out. Keep a network of resources. I'm not big on going to gym. I walk every day. I love cycling. Um, I do yoga. I do tai chi. And I have a friend who owns a gym, so yeah, I go there, but it's just really not my thing. I just kind of get through so I'm not going to advise. I'm not going to be giving any kind of physical fitness advice, except that it's important and people should take up something and either do it on their own or find a trainer. But I have network resources. I have a dietitian. I have a, as in, I don't have a dietitian. I know a dietitian who's really, really good. I know an amazing personal trainer. Um, I know psychiatrists that do lifestyle medicine. So, as with everything, we have to know when to refer out and when we can educate the patient ourselves. Oh, that's it. Yeah, at the end. Please contact me directly for any recommendations for reading or reference to studies. This is me. This concludes my presentation. I think I will. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Frank. I'm really, and we have some questions and I want to get to them. I am really struck though by just the notion, like we said, I'm kind of repeating here, right? And you do start to see some themes emerge, and it's really very, this talk is very interesting as a whole to see how many tributaries kind of maybe link to some general conclusions, and maybe we'll get to those. I do want to get to the questions here because we do have some in the Q&A, and feel free to, I'm just going to take them in order that they came. Um, Feel free
What
to pop more in there, and we'll do as much as we can. We have about 10 minutes here.
what do I do?
Um,
Do should I stop screens? What do you?
you could leave that up for a
Okay,
second,
okay.
and yeah, I'll ask you the question. You can just answer it. You have to give us the exact answers to these questions, penetrating questions. So here you go. Um, this one says, do you recognize other spiritual practices outside of mainstream organized religions with your clients? So you know, maybe just talk a little bit more about what how you define spiritual practices. I know you did mention that it's not necessarily religion, but maybe say a little bit more about
Oh,
spiritual
that's
practices and what's
yeah. Oh
helpful.
my God, that is such an amazing question. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Whoever asked it. Yes, I told myself, and I'm failing. I'm failing terribly. But I told myself when I retired from active duty, I'm still in reserve, so I still support the special forces guys and stuff. But when I get out of active duty, and I was just kind of suddenly the king of my time and just doing private practice, I told myself that I want everything in my life to be a spiritual experience. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. So I try to, like some people have rituals about food, right? Religious people maybe have a prayer, but again, that person asked about religion. So, but outside of that, you can, like American Indians, right? They had all kinds of rituals about giving thanks for the food. So just kind of contemplating where the food came from, that can be a spiritual experience. Like I mentioned, I do daily walks and I actually make little silly videos every day, just talking about. So I talk about nature and the awe of nature. Now, awe can be, Rudolf Otto, right? It can be kind of the religious experience, but it can just be something you can nurture, right? It doesn't, I mean, it can strike you. Some people talk about, oh, I walked into Grand Canyon and I was just struck by all of this, right? And whether you think of that as, think about like this nothingness and then this minuscule um, particle that exploded, and from that it started cooling and elements formed, and right the universe. However, it doesn't matter. But if you can walk through nature and go, wow, this is really amazing, and how I find myself here, and look at the flowers and look at, so you can. I think for me the big thing is intention. So yeah, a lot of times say, oh, walk can be good because X, Y, and Z, but I try to add to it, but it can depend on your intention. So the spiritual experience can be just behind intentionality. It comes to food, whether it comes to, when you come home and you hit the garage and you work on your 55 Chevy, that can, if you put the right intention behind it, be kind of spiritual experience. It's kind of, you know, it's just something beyond you. So absolutely, yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
definitely not.
it sounds like yeah, like kind of what's going on for you personally matters a lot. And it reminds me of reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance when I was in
Yeah.
college,
Oh,
which many people I think may have
that's it.
read
Oh,
it.
and I'm sorry. And furthermore, actually, let me reverse it. You can be super religious without any spirituality,
Hmm.
right? You can follow the dogma. You can be a good Christian or a good Jew or a good whatever, right? And just follow the things and still have no spiritual experience. Versus most religions have so many opportunities for spiritual expression or intention or reception of some kind of spirituality. So yeah, I
Awesome. Yeah.
definitely, yeah. I don't know if I answered that question. I hope so.
Yeah, no, I think so. Someone asked about the social media links, which you put here, so we will skip that one. This one says, thank you, Dr. Frank. For someone who's looking to make lifestyle changes for diet and exercise, but is perhaps feeling overwhelmed by the prospect, what are some suggestions for simple first steps to get started?
So I would start with nutrition and exercise, and I wouldn't overthink them. As I mentioned, I go for a walk daily, 3 miles, like and don't worry about the speed, don't worry about whatever, just simple rules. So I'll share my own. It's like my daily 3 mile model is there's no banking it. I can say I'm gonna walk 6 miles today, and then I don't have to walk tomorrow. There's no catching up. There's no, oh, I'm gonna miss today, but I'll catch it up. I'll just keep it every day, get out there, and so I think 3 miles. I arrived at 3 miles is because you can do it in an hour. You can do it on a lunch break. But so I did it for my patients, really. That's how it started. But okay, if you can't walk 3 miles, do a mile. Just establish some kind of routine that's doable and do that. And when it comes to food, so I did like my internship. I spent a lot of time at the VA working with a friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, and he was just amazing psychiatrist, old school guy, like sort of Norman Rockwell painting looking kind of guy with a bow tie. And so we would go to lunch, and he was like old school white American dude. So every day, mashed potatoes, meatloaf, and string beans. And his name was Dr. Nelson. He was at the Long Beach
Mhm.
VA. And just amazing guy, really. I loved him. We've been friends for many, many years. So I had this idea, like, okay, I'm gonna call my diet Dr. Nelson plate. Like, don't overthink it. Just potatoes. Don't put butter in, whatever. Just simple. It's just some kind of carb, some kind of starch. Green beans. Okay, that can be broccoli, steamed, just vegetable. And then, he would have meatloaf. I'm vegan, so okay, some beans or some tofu or some whatever. And then, if you're not losing weight, all right, maybe a little bit less carbs. Just don't overthink it. Really, again, I hope I answered that. Just
Yeah,
keep
no,
it
that's
simple.
great.
Start and intentionality behind it, behind the walk, behind the food, and then establish some kind of spiritual routine. It can be anything like daily morning, like people do gratitude journals and those whatever. Just maybe tell yourself every day different. If you struggle with a lot of things, you can do like weekly. Okay, today I will concentrate on, well, anything. Me being such an asshole all the time, and I will every day on my walks. I will concentrate on. I will be a nice person. I will be kind to others. Whatever, right? or yeah,
It sounds like the doability of it is just as important as what you do, right?
yeah, for
To be
sure.
keeping it simple. Yeah, there's a few more questions here that I want to just kind of, actually, another one just came in. Are there any studies linking ACE scores, adverse child experiences, to military service? That's interesting. Years ago, I learned that 85% of those with PTSD had childhood
Yeah,
trauma, but
yeah,
I wonder if there are other more recent studies you're aware of.
no.
ACEs scores are more lifestyle impacts we didn't have control over. Yeah, any thoughts on ACEs and LM?
Oh, except yes, that person's correct.
Mhm.
I've seen that research. I'm aware of that research. That because trauma, compound trauma, right? So if you start with childhood trauma, I don't want to say you are more likely. I guess that's what the studies kind of point to, right? Because you can also build resiliency. I don't want to overlook that, right? A post-traumatic growth. But assuming that you were traumatized in a negative sense, then you just kind of compounds. Then yeah, in the military, maybe you have less resiliency. So in fact, another I've seen a long time ago, I've seen some studies, they thought like if we start recruiting, not recruiting, but like people from gangs and just kind of really tough guys, they will be much more resilient because they were exposed to such a horrible things maybe when they were a kid. And that's not true. It's actually on the contrary.
Mhm.
It's compounding trauma.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something that I exactly specialize in, so I
Mhm.
apologize.
Mhm.
Yes, that person's correct. I have not seen any recent
Yeah.
research. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Can you elaborate more on how mindfulness can lead to intentional implementation of all the recommendations that the ACLM pillars make? So, how does mindfulness play into this in general?
Well, I guess maybe I meant mindfulness when I said intention.
Mm. Mhm.
So I mean, mindfulness became such a cliche, right, and such a broad term. So I kind of try to stay a little bit away from it. But so what do we mean by mindfulness, right? Even saying being in the present can be, you know, it can be kind of become a cliche.
Mhm.
But yet mindfulness is super super important. I'm not saying, I'm just kind of being careful about the cliche part of it, but it's
Mhm.
actually based on reality. So I
Yeah.
would say intention.
Mhm.
Like I think the example of what I said with nature. You go out there and you just kind of, okay, I'm gonna stop thinking about all these issues and I'm gonna concentrate on just right now. Slow down and smell the roses, right? So that's kind of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Uh, Unless that person means, because it's such so mindfulness is in mindful meditation, right? Like being in
Mhm.
a moment of meditation. But I assume that they mean just mindfulness in life. So
Right.
intentionality, I
Right.
really think that's super important. Remind ourselves because we forget.
Yeah.
So like what I said about me and being retired, I felt that whole day long.
Yeah.
So just kind of just remind ourselves, maybe daily mindfulness practice, telling ourselves what is the intention for the day. And
Yeah.
then maybe some people put stickams on their everywhere, and remind, oh, okay, coming back to this is what I'm working on right now. I will be mindful. I will be in the moment.
Yeah, it seems like there's so many cultural practices that tend to push us in the opposite direction. And this
Yeah.
is to be mindful and to be intentional can help us bring ourselves to doing some more of these things, these healthy lifestyle choices. Last one here. What about the recommendation? And I've been hearing a lot about this too. It's been in the news and recent studies. Recommendation that the key to longevity, especially for women, is strength training. Do you have any thoughts on how strength training plays into longevity? And I'm sure you've seen some of these studies too.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's probably one of my area because I'm not a gym rat. I'm the weakest, but there's no doubt about it. That's such an evidence-based practice for the bone density and for everything that's strength-based. And just, I mean, even like just body weight, right? Like if you do
Mhm.
squats, just body weight, being able to falls are um, such a dangerous thing for elderly. And so
Yeah,
just doing squats to get to build that muscle, both the bone density and the muscle that surrounds the hips and everything, to be able to get up if you fall, or hopefully not fall in the first place.
yeah,
If you do free weights, and again, I'm not, I'm the wrong person for this. But just if you do free weights, right? Just balance is so important. So I think if you do that, if you do anything that improves your balance,
yeah,
uh, I would try to do all of it. I would
yeah,
go. Walking is weight bearing exercise.
Yeah.
So I would walk. If you have the time, yeah, definitely weight-bearing exercise, going to the gym, throwing some weights, that's really good. Yoga is debatable. It can be weight-bearing exercise. Uh, but I would kind of try to cover more things like Tai Chi, something for balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. There's so much stuff here. These are really great questions, everyone. We are at the end of our time. Feel free to contact us at the information here. If you have other questions, we can pass them along to Dr. Frank. Thank you so much. This was a very wide-ranging, incredible presentation. And the themes that came out of it, I think, are really, really, really important and relevant for where we're at. So thank you so much for your time. Please do go to our questionnaires here. There's one just for general feedback, and then one for the CE credit if you are interested in that. That's the end of our time today. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Frank.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, everyone.